She showed up at the wrong address. The cowboy said, "Maybe you were meant to find me." Elias Crow lived at the very edge of the world. Not the edge of the galaxy, not even the edge of the nearest town, but the edge of his own life, on the planet Viridia. 7, where the sun split into twin orange disks over endless plains of red dust, Elias had built a small homestead far from anyone else. Solar panels hummed quietly atop his cabin, and robotic cattle roamed between the jagged rocks, each one tagged and scanned to keep the fragile ecosystem in balance. It was a lonely life, but it was safe. And after everything that had happened years ago, safe was all Elias believed he deserved. The gate that guarded his land was old, metal bars worn by wind and sun, wires looping across its frame to detect any movement. It was more than a gate, it was a promise. It was his barrier against the world. And Elias had kept it closed for a reason. The world had once let him down, and he had let the world down in return. That evening, as the twin suns sank slowly toward the horizon, Elias was repairing a broken solar tracker. He worked slowly, methodically, the only sound the hiss of welding sparks and the occasional mechanical bleat of a nearby calf bot. He was humming an old tune, one his ex-wife, Leora, had liked years ago, a tune he had not thought of in decades. The soft hum of the homestead was broken by a sharp, unusual beep from the gate sensor. Elias froze, wiping sweat from his brow. He knew every sound his system made. This was different. Someone was approaching. He stepped out from under the cabin roof, squinting against the low, burning suns. At first he saw only the silhouette of a traveler walking slowly across the dusty plains, a small travel case in hand. Her steps were deliberate. There was no rush, no sign of panic, no sign of danger. But somehow, the sight of a human figure after all these years made Elias's chest tighten. As she came closer, he could see her face.
He froze. It was Mara Vale.
His ex-wife's sister, a face he had not seen in over a decade. Her hair was darker than Leora's, pulled back into a practical braid, and her eyes held the same kind of calm determination he had once admired in her sister. But there was something else in those eyes, too. Something soft and yet unshakably serious. "I came to forgive you," she said simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the universe. Elias's first thought was that he had imagined it. Surely Mara could not have found him here in this remote corner of Viridia. 7. And yet there she stood. No weapons, no alarms, just her small travel case and that sentence that cut through the years of dust and regret like a knife. I don't know what you mean," he said finally, his voice rough from disuse. Mara's lips curved into a gentle, almost sad smile. "You know exactly what I mean. You know what happened with Leora, with everything. I've come because it's time." Elias swallowed hard. His fingers itched to close the gate and disappear back into his work, back into the quiet life he had built for himself. But something in Mara's gaze held him. There was no anger in her, no judgment, just presence. He stepped back. "Then come inside, but I warn you, Mara, this isn't the place for visitors. I live out here alone for a reason." She nodded, setting her case down on the cracked earth. "I'm not here for comfort. I'm here because it's time, Elias. And I need your help." The cabin door opened slowly, and Elias led her inside. The interior was small but tidy. Solar lanterns cast warm pools of light across the rough wooden floor. A small table sat in the corner, a few pots of dry herbs on top. The smell of metal, dust, and old oil filled the air, a smell he had grown used to, but Mara noticed it immediately. "It hasn't changed much," she said quietly. Elias shrugged. "It doesn't need to. Out here, things don't change unless you make them. And believe me, I've made my share of mistakes, enough to last a lifetime." Mara didn't respond immediately. She unpacked her travel case with care, revealing a small datapad and a few notebooks. She sat on the edge of a chair, watching him work as if measuring every movement. "Why now?" Elias asked finally, sitting opposite her. "Why come here after all this time, after everything?" Mara leaned back, her eyes distant for a moment. "Because forgiveness isn't just for the one who did wrong. It's also for the one who needs to understand it. Leora always believed people could change, Elias. I've spent years wondering if you could, if anyone could, and now I need to know." Elias felt a pang in his chest. It wasn't guilt exactly. It was the memory of the choices he had made, the paths he had walked, the lives he had affected without ever speaking a word. He had stayed silent, avoided blame, and had buried the past deep under the weight of the frontier's dust, but Mara's arrival shattered that carefully built wall. He looked out the window at the plains, glowing red in the twin sun's dying light. I don't know if I deserve forgiveness, he said, almost to himself. You might not, she replied. But that's not the point. The point is, can you do the right thing now? Can you face what happened and help fix it? Elias swallowed hard. He didn't answer. The truth was heavier than any apology could carry. He had made choices that had affected not just Leora but countless others across the colonies. Choices that had saved some lives but had hurt others. And for years he had convinced himself that staying away, staying quiet, was the only way to make amends without bringing more pain. Mara seemed to sense his thoughts. She leaned forward, resting her hands on the table. I'm not here to judge, Elias. I'm here to give you the chance to choose again. The past is frozen, but the future can still be shaped. You've always been someone who could shape things, if you dared. Her words struck him in a way he could not describe. For the first time in years, the weight of his solitude felt purposeful. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about forgetting. Maybe it was about action. A soft breeze drifted in through the cracked window, carrying with it the smell of the red plains, of dust and dry grass, and the faint scent of distant rain. Elias looked at Mara. She wasn't Leora, but she carried a part of her sister's courage, her unwavering hope. And maybe, just maybe, that was what he needed to confront his own mistakes. The night deepened, and the twin suns disappeared beyond the horizon, leaving Viridia, 7 bathed in cold, silver moonlight. Elias and Mara sat in silence, the hum of the solar panels filling the space between them. There was no anger, no shouting, no tears, just quiet understanding, the kind that spoke louder than any words. Finally, Mara broke the silence. Tomorrow we start, she said softly. There's something buried beneath this land, Elias, something from your past. And if we can uncover it, maybe the colony, maybe even Leora, will finally understand why you did what you did. Elias nodded slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing, replaced by a strange mix of apprehension and hope. Then tomorrow we start, he echoed. As Mara settled into the small guest space he had cleared in the cabin, Elias stepped outside to the gate. He looked at the horizon, the red dust stretching endlessly, the first stars of night beginning to glimmer. He realized something he hadn't felt in years. He was not entirely alone. Not anymore. And for the first time in a long while, he felt the tiniest flicker of possibility. Perhaps forgiveness could exist here, at the edge of the world, under the twin suns, with the dust of the past still clinging to the ground. Perhaps, just perhaps, this unexpected visitor had come to remind him that the frontier was not only a place of isolation, but also a place for new beginnings. And with that thought, Elias closed the gate behind him, ready to face what tomorrow might bring. The next morning, the twin suns rose slowly over Viridia, 7 painting the plains with streaks of orange and pink. Elias woke before Mara as he always did. He moved quietly through the cabin, feeding the solar cattle bots, checking the sensors on the perimeter, and making sure nothing had shifted in the night. The silence of the homestead felt different now, not empty, but filled with anticipation. Mara was already awake, sitting by the small window, her notebook open, writing with a steady hand. She didn't look at him as he entered the room. She seemed lost in thought, as if the twin suns themselves were telling her secrets. "Morning," Elias said cautiously, setting down the fresh water tray for the bots. Mara looked up and smiled faintly. "Good morning, Elias. Did you sleep well?" "Enough," he said. "And you? You didn't seem tired last night." "I didn't need to sleep," she replied. "Not yet. There's too much to prepare." She tapped the notebook gently. "We're going to uncover something buried here, and, Elias felt the familiar tightness in his chest. He had spent years avoiding his past, hiding it under the red dust and silence. But now, with Mara's calm presence, that past was calling again. He nodded slowly. "All right. Tell me what you need me to do." Mara opened her datapad and showed him a map of the surrounding land. "I've been studying colony records," she said. "Decades ago, you helped design a network of underground data vaults here. I believe one of them is buried somewhere beneath this property. It holds information from the terraforming project, the project that caused so many problems in the outer colonies." Elias swallowed. The terraforming project had been controversial. He had made choices that affected thousands. trying to balance survival and ethics. Many things had gone wrong, and Leora had blamed him for keeping secrets, for making decisions she didn't understand. "And you think it's still here?" he asked. "I know it's here," Mara said firmly, "but it's been hidden under layers of dust, storms, and shifting land. I need someone who knows this place, someone who knows the vault systems, to help me reach it."
Elias hesitated.
Part of him wanted to tell her no. This was the life he had built, a life of quiet, far from the mistakes of the past. But part of him felt a spark of responsibility he couldn't ignore. "I'll help," he said finally. "But we have to be careful. The old systems are unstable. One wrong move, and we could bury whatever we're looking for forever." Mara's eyes lit up.
"Then we'll move carefully."
Step by step, they spent the morning preparing. Elias showed Mara how to navigate the solar cattle paths to avoid triggering sensors, how to read the land for subtle changes caused by the underground structures, and how to recognize the faint energy hums that hinted at hidden machinery. Mara watched intently, absorbing every detail with quiet focus. By midday, they were ready. They left the cabin, carrying tools, a portable scanner, and Mara's datapad. The red plains stretched endlessly around them, bathed in heat and the shimmering light of the twin suns. The journey was silent at first, the only sound the soft crunch of dust beneath their boots. "You know," Mara said after a while, "I've always wondered why you came here. Why you chose this place, so far from everything." Elias didn't answer immediately. He looked at the horizon, at the jagged rocks and endless plains. "I ran," he said finally. "From mistakes, from people who judged me, from my own guilt. This land, it was the only place where I could think without being haunted. And yet," Mara said softly, "the past found you anyway." Elias glanced at her. She was right. She always was. No matter how far he ran, no matter how quiet he lived, the consequences of his choices had followed him. And now, standing together under the twin suns, he realized that maybe he didn't want to run anymore. They reached a section of the plains where the ground was cracked and uneven. Elias paused, lowering the scanner. The faint hum he had taught Mara to recognize was stronger here. He knelt, brushing away the dust, and revealed a small metallic panel, almost invisible beneath the red earth. "This is it," he said. "But it's delicate. One wrong touch and we could trigger a collapse." Mara nodded, kneeling beside him. Together, they carefully lifted the panel, revealing a narrow hatch descending into darkness. The air smelled faintly of metal and earth. Elias pulled out a small portable light. "I'll go first," he said. "I know the structure. Follow my instructions, and we'll be fine." Mara nodded again. "I trust you." The interior of the vault was tight and dimly lit. The walls were lined with old circuits and faded control panels. Dust floated in the air, disturbed only by their movements. Elias guided Mara step by step, pointing out areas that were fragile, wires that had decayed, and mechanisms that had to be bypassed carefully. As they moved deeper, Mara's curiosity grew. "Why was all this hidden underground?" she asked. Elias paused. "Because people wanted the truth buried. Some of the data, it would have caused panic, or worse. Decisions had to be made quietly. And I made some of them." Mara's face softened. "You carried the weight of it all alone." He nodded. "Alone, and it was easier that way, but maybe easier isn't always better." Finally, they reached a chamber at the heart of the vault. Panels of data lines glowed faintly, still functional after decades. Mara scanned them, her fingers moving over the controls with practiced precision. "There it is," she whispered. "The records we need." As the data unfolded on her pad, Elias could see old projects, decisions, and experiments he had long tried to forget. Some were triumphs, others mistakes. But all of them were his responsibility. Mara studied the information carefully, her expression unreadable. "This explains everything," she said at last. "The failures in the outer colonies, the sudden migrations, the accusations against you. It all makes sense now." Elias looked at her. "And Leora?" Mara sighed. She never knew the full story. "But now, she might. She might understand why you did what you did." The weight of the moment pressed on him. He had spent years thinking that some mistakes could never be forgiven. But Mara was here, quietly, patiently showing him that maybe forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past. Maybe it was about facing it together. They worked for hours, cataloging the data, ensuring it could be safely transmitted without triggering the old security systems. Elias felt a strange connection to the past, to the life he had left behind, and even to the sister of the woman he had once loved. Mara was calm, precise, and unwavering, a steady presence in the whirlwind of his memories. When they finally emerged from the vault, the suns were dipping low on the horizon again, casting long shadows across the plains. Mara carried the data carefully, and Elias followed, feeling the red dust crunch beneath his boots in a way that felt familiar and comforting. They reached the cabin, both silent, both lost in thought. The day had been long, exhausting, and emotionally draining, yet strangely liberating. Elias realized that the weight he had carried alone for years was lighter somehow, shared now, even in silence. "Tomorrow," Mara said as she settled into her guest space, "we'll start reviewing this properly. There's more here than I can process in one day." Elias nodded. "And I'll help. I need to. Maybe it's finally time to stop hiding." They sat together on the porch watching the twin suns set once more. The sky shifted from orange and pink to deep violet, and the first stars began to appear. For a moment neither spoke. There was only the quiet of the plains, the hum of the solar panels, and the soft wind that whispered through the rocks. Elias realized something important. The past could not be changed. The mistakes he had made could not be erased. But the future was still open. And with Mara here, with the knowledge they had uncovered together, maybe there was a chance to make things right. Not for himself, not for her, but for everyone who had been affected. As night fell fully over Viridia, 7, Elias felt a strange sense of calm. He was no longer just a man hiding from the world. He was a man standing at the edge of it, ready to face whatever came next. And Mara, quiet, patient, and determined, was there to remind him that even the deepest mistakes could lead to something new. The twin suns had set, but their light lingered in the sky, and Elias understood that this was not the end. It was only the beginning. The morning air on Viridia 7 was crisp, carrying the faint scent of dust and dry grass. Elias woke before Mara again, as if the habit of solitude had not left him. But today felt different. The red plains outside seemed sharper, more alive, as if the land itself was waiting for something. He moved to the cabin's small kitchen and prepared a simple breakfast. The hum of the solar panels and the soft clatter of utensils filled the room. When Mara joined him, she carried her data pad, already glowing with information from the vault they had uncovered the day before. "Morning," Elias said, pouring a small cup of recycled water. Mara smiled faintly. "Morning. Ready for another long day?" Elias nodded. "I suppose so. What exactly are we looking for today?" Mara opened the pad and pointed to a section of data lines. "I want to trace the decisions you made back then. Not just what happened, but why. There are patterns hidden in the data, choices that affected more than just the colonies. I need to understand the reasoning behind them." Elias frowned. "Why? That was years ago." "It's already done. There's no changing it." "You're right," Mara said gently. "It can't be changed. But understanding it, that's the key to fixing what we can now. People need the truth, Elias. And maybe Leora needs it too." He hesitated. Leora's name brought a wave of memories. Her laughter, her stubbornness, the arguments they had shared over decisions he thought were necessary. He had avoided her, avoided the colonies, avoided everything that reminded him of the mistakes he had made, and yet here he was, standing at the edge of the past once again. "All right," he said finally. "I'll help. But you have to promise me something." "What?" Mara asked. "Promise me we go carefully. One wrong step, and the consequences could be worse than leaving things buried." Mara nodded. "I promise." We moved slowly. They spent the morning analyzing the data in detail. Mara asked questions about decisions he had made, the reasons behind certain projects, and the choices that had led to controversy. Elias answered honestly, carefully, revealing parts of himself he had long kept hidden. "It wasn't easy," he said at one point, rubbing his temples. "I had to make choices that no one would understand. I thought staying silent was the safest way. But maybe it was the wrong way." Mara listened quietly. "It wasn't wrong. You did what you thought was best. But now you have a chance to make it right, at least for the future." As the suns reached their peak, Elias suggested they take a break. They stepped outside, the heat of the plains washing over them. A soft wind lifted the red dust, and for a moment the world felt calm and empty. "You've changed a lot, Elias," Mara said quietly. "Even in the time we've spent apart, I can see it. You carry your choices differently now." He looked at her. Maybe I've had to. I've lived with them for too long. But change, it's not easy. Not when the past keeps knocking at your gate. Mara smiled. Then it's good you're letting it in now. They returned inside, focusing on the task at hand. The data was complex, filled with patterns, decisions, and consequences. Some of it was technical, dealing with terraforming, colony planning, and energy distribution. Some of it was moral decisions about what to save and what to sacrifice. Elias guided Mara carefully, explaining the reasoning behind each choice. You see, he said, pointing to a sequence of decisions, I had to prioritize the survival of the main colonies. It meant leaving smaller settlements vulnerable. It was not ideal, but it was necessary. Mara nodded. I understand now. It wasn't about cruelty or neglect. It was about survival. They worked in silence for hours, only speaking when necessary. As the suns began to set, Mara finally looked up. There's one part I don't understand, she said. A decision you made that seems personal. Something that affected Leora directly. Elias paused. His hands trembled slightly as he set the pad aside. I thought keeping her in the dark was protecting her. I wanted to shield her from guilt and fear, but I see now that I only pushed her away. Mara reached out and touched his hand lightly. Elias, forgiveness isn't about forgetting or pretending the past didn't happen. It's about facing it and maybe helping others understand it too. He looked at her, feeling the weight of years pressing on his chest. And if I fail? If the truth doesn't fix anything? Mara shook her head. Then at least you tried. At least you didn't stay silent anymore. The night grew darker outside. The twin suns had disappeared, leaving Veridia 7 under the cold silver glow of its moons. Stars sparkled faintly, mirrored in the metallic surfaces of the scattered vault equipment. Elias felt the silence differently now. Less like isolation, more like a pause before action. I never realized how much the past can shape the present, he said finally. Every choice I made, every mistake, it all led me here. Mara nodded. And every step you take from now on shapes the future. You have a chance to make things right, Elias. Not just for Leora or me, but for everyone affected by those decisions. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settle more firmly on his shoulders. For years he had hidden in the quiet of the plains, avoiding confrontation, avoiding judgment. But now, with Mara here, guiding him, he felt a strange strength. He could face this. He could choose differently now. We'll finish this, he said, his voice steady. We'll uncover the rest of the data, understand it, and share it properly, and maybe it will finally give Leora and the others the answers they need. Mara smiled, a mixture of relief and quiet determination. That's all I've ever wanted. That, and to see you face the past without fear. They worked late into the night, their only light coming from the small lamps and the soft glow of Mara's datapad. Elias guided her through the remaining sequences, carefully bypassing unstable circuits and old security locks. The hum of the vault machinery filled the space, a low, steady sound that reminded him of the years he had spent hiding in silence. Hours passed, and finally they completed the task. Mara leaned back, stretching, while Elias sat quietly, staring at the flickering data lines. Tomorrow, Mara said softly, we'll prepare the information for transmission. The colonies, the archives, they need to see this, and so does Leora. Elias nodded. I know. It won't be easy, but I'm ready. I think I'm ready to stop hiding. For a long moment, they sat together in silence. Outside, the moons reflected on the red plains, casting long shadows across the cabin and the surrounding rocks. The twin suns had gone, but their presence lingered in memory, a reminder that light could return even after darkness. Elias felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. The past was heavy, filled with mistakes and regrets. But for the first time in years, he felt the possibility of redemption. Not the kind that erased his errors, but the kind that allowed him to act, to choose differently, and to face the consequences with courage. Mara watched him quietly. You've always carried the weight alone, she said, but you don't have to anymore. You have a choice now, Elias. And choices? They can be powerful. He looked at her, the determination in her eyes matching the courage he once saw in Leora. He realized that forgiveness wasn't a simple word. It was a path, a decision, a series of steps that could lead to healing, understanding, and even hope. I will choose, he said finally. I will face the past, and I will do what I can to make it right. Mara smiled, and for the first time Elias felt a true sense of partnership, of trust, and of shared purpose. The journey ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, questions, and perhaps even disappointments, but together they could face them. As the night deepened over Viridia 7, Elias and Mara looked out over the endless red plains. Somewhere beyond the horizon the colonies waited, and soon the truth would reach them. The twin moons reflected in their eyes, and for the first time Elias felt that redemption was not just a dream. It was a choice, and he had chosen to walk it. The dawn on Viridia 7 was pale, soft light spilling over the red plains. Elias Crow stood outside his cabin, brushing dust from his sleeves, staring at the twin suns as they rose slowly over the horizon. The air smelled dry, earthy, and alive. For the first time in years, he felt anticipation instead of dread. Mara joined him, carrying her datapad, now full of carefully organized records from the vault. She moved with quiet purpose, the morning wind catching her braid as she walked. Elias watched her, a strange mixture of gratitude and apprehension filling his chest. The journey they had taken together, through the past, the mistakes, and the heavy truths, had changed him. "Ready?" Mara asked softly. Elias nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." The first task of the day was transmitting the data. The colonies depended on the information, on understanding why mistakes had been made, what had been sacrificed, and what could still be corrected. Elias had feared this moment for years, the exposure of his past decisions. But Mara's calm presence steadied him. He realized that fear was natural, but it could not stop him anymore. They set up the transmission equipment on the small porch, solar panels humming as they powered the systems. Elias guided Mara carefully, double-checking frequencies, encryption codes, and data integrity. The hum of the devices blended with the wind, a sound that now felt like the heartbeat of the frontier itself. "Once this goes through," Mara said, "people will see everything. Not just the mistakes, but the reasoning, the decisions, the consequences, the full story. I hope they understand." Mara gave him a small smile. "They will. And Leora, she'll understand too. You'll see." The first transmission was sent to the central archives of the outer colonies. Then, one by one, smaller settlements received the data. Messages flooded in, curious, cautious, and eventually grateful. Many people were shocked by the complexity of the choices, the delicate balance of survival, and the weight of responsibility he had carried alone. But slowly, understanding began to grow. Elias and Mara watched the transmissions, waiting for the response that mattered most. When the signal from Leora's settlement finally arrived, Elias felt his heart tighten. He hesitated, fingers hovering over the comlink. Then he pressed the connection. Leora's face appeared on the screen. Her hair was lighter now, streaked with silver, but her eyes were the same, sharp, strong, and full of questions. "Elias," she said softly. "Leora," he whispered, unable to stop the years of silence from pressing on him. "I've seen the data," she said slowly. "I understand now. Why you did what you did. Why you stayed silent. Why you carried it alone." Elias felt a lump in his throat. I thought hiding was the best way. I thought I was protecting you." Leora's eyes softened. "You were protecting us the only way you knew how." But it still hurt. It still left questions that never had answers. "I know," Elias said, "and I'm sorry. I can't change the past, but I can face it now. And I want to make it right in any way I can." There was a long pause on the screen. Then Leora spoke, her voice calm but filled with warmth. "I forgive you, Elias, not because the past is forgotten, but because you've chosen to face it. That means more than you realize." A strange weight lifted from Elias's chest. He looked at Mara, who simply nodded, her expression calm and quiet but full of approval. The journey had not been easy, but this, the forgiveness of someone he had wronged, was worth every step. After the call, the day passed in a blur of action. Elias and Mara reviewed the rest of the data, sending detailed explanations and instructions to the colonies. People wrote back with questions, gratitude, and encouragement. Slowly, the frontier world felt less isolated, less like a place of punishment, and more like a place of purpose. As the twin suns began to set, painting the plains with streaks of orange and red, Elias and Mara walked out onto the porch. The wind stirred, lifting dust and carrying with it the scent of possibility. "You've done more than I imagined," Mara said softly. "The colonies, they'll rebuild better because of this." "You've made a difference, Elias." He shook his head, smiling faintly. "Not me alone. You helped. And maybe Leora's forgiveness helped too." Mara tilted her head, studying him. "Redemption isn't something given. It's something chosen. You've chosen it today." Elias looked out over the plains, at the endless stretch of red dust and jagged rocks. For years, he had thought the frontier was a place to hide from mistakes. But now he understood that the frontier was also a place to face them, to rebuild, and to find hope where none seemed possible. That night, they sat together on the porch under the twin moons. Mara opened her notebook, writing quietly while Elias simply watched the stars. The silence was comfortable now, not heavy, not full of fear. It was full of possibility. "You know," Mara said finally, "forgiveness isn't just about people. Sometimes it's about the land, too." "About letting go of what's buried and letting new things grow." Elias nodded slowly. "Then it's time to let the past rest, to stop hiding, to start building again." The twin moons reflected faintly on the red plains, casting soft shadows over the cabin and the surrounding land. Elias realized that for the first time in a long while, he was not just surviving, he was living. He had faced the consequences of his choices, shared the truth, and accepted forgiveness. And in that, he had found freedom. Days passed, and the colonies began to act on the information Elias and Mara had provided. Plans were adjusted, resources allocated, and communities strengthened. Reports from the settlements arrived regularly, praising the careful work and explaining how understanding the past allowed them to prepare for the future. Elias felt a quiet pride tempered with humility. He had been part of something larger than himself, and now he could finally rest in the knowledge that he had done what he could to make the frontier a better place. One evening, Mara stood at the edge of the plains, looking out at the horizon. Elias joined her, his boots crunching on the red dust. "Will you stay?" he asked quietly. Mara turned to him, her braid catching the light of the setting suns. "I can't stay forever," she said. "There are other places, other colonies, other people who need guidance. But I'll always remember this place and what you've done here." Elias nodded, understanding. "Then perhaps this isn't goodbye, just until next time." She smiled, a small, quiet smile. "Until next time." As Mara prepared to leave, Elias stood at the gate, watching her small shuttle rise above the horizon. For years the gate had been a symbol of isolation, a barrier between him and the world. But now it was a symbol of choice, of courage, and of new beginnings. When the shuttle disappeared into the sky, Elias closed the gate gently. The red plains stretched endlessly before him, and for the first time he felt that the frontier was no longer a place of exile. It was a place of opportunity, a place to build, to grow, and to live without fear of the past. Elias returned to his cabin, walking through the familiar rooms with a sense of peace. He sat by the small window, looking out at the plains under the soft glow of the moons. The wind stirred gently, carrying the scent of dust and possibilities. He felt gratitude for Mara, for Leora's forgiveness, and for the chance to face his mistakes and still find hope. The twin suns would rise again tomorrow, and he would greet them not with fear, but with purpose. The frontier was vast, unpredictable, and sometimes lonely, but it was also full of chance. And Elias Crow, standing at its edge, finally understood that forgiveness, understanding, and courage could make even the wildest frontier feel like home. As the night deepened, Elias felt a calm he had never known. The past had been faced. Mistakes had been acknowledged, forgiveness had been given and received. And now, under the twin moons and the endless red sky, he was free to build whatever future he chose. For the first time, the frontier did not feel like the edge of the world. It felt like the beginning of everything.